Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining and everyone who's watching this recording. I am Gabby Parent-Doliner and I am the Director of Water Rangers. And I just want to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and many now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So I am delighted to welcome you to the Lake Erie Guardians program today. And we're going to be also celebrating and looking at all the inter-organizational collaborations that made this program such a success. So what we're covering today. This is our agenda. So we're just going to, just a quick intro to Water Rangers and to what the Lake Erie Guardians program is. We're going to look at, because this program's been running since 2021, we're going to look at some of those program highlights and what all these amazing volunteers have done to date. We're going to look at some of the collaborations, because that's a big part of this, of the Lake Erie Guardians program, is all the different groups and communities that we're working with. Then we're going to jump into our test kit training. I'll also cover an intro to the data management. So that's how you're going to be managing and sharing and then accessing your test results. And then we're just going to look on what's on for the rest of 2023. So the session should be at just about an hour. So in case you're watching from home, so you could see the length of the video. Okay, so first, just a little bit about Water Rangers. So we were founded in 2016 by Kat Kavanagh. She's our amazing director and executive director and founder. And our mission, really, all we're about is empowering communities to understand and care for their local waterways. We connect people to science through our organization's education programming and our tools, and we create accessible water quality monitoring tools and data systems that communities, so that communities have a voice in protecting their rivers, their lakes, their creeks, and their streams, and now their marine environment. So we're working more and more with oceans. So what we do is we design and develop easy-to-use monitoring test kits, and you should have received yours already. And they can be used by everyone, so from schools, community-based monitoring groups, government bodies, and lots of secondary education programs. So they're used by every single age group and every single type of community. What we offer free training and support to people collecting data using our test kits, and they can use our field app to input their data directly into our data portal. So we're going to review that data management today. So really it's about collecting, inputting, and sharing the data. So just a little bit about our impact to date. So to date, we've trained over 20,000 people on water monitoring. We've distributed over 5,000, nearly 6,000 test kits around the world. We have 5,500 water bodies monitored. We've distributed 2,300 test kits. We're operating in about 20 countries, and over 200 groups use our platform to manage and share their data. So just a bit of a background on the Lake Erie Guardians program. So this was launched in 2021, and we paired up with the Canadian Freshwater Alliance. So that org is no longer in operation, but they were our main partner on this when we launched this program. The program is funded by the province of Ontario and the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, and it's part of the Great Lakes Local Action Fund. So back in 2021, both Water Rangers and the Freshwater Alliance, we were both sharing that mission. We were dedicated to protecting Canada's fresh water and empowering people with tools to connect to freshwater science. And then we put out a call in 2021 for people to come and join the program. So we had about 35 spots that first year. And that was, the height of the pandemic. And we put out the call inviting them to kind of join exactly what you're doing to help keep an eye on the health of the Lake Erie watershed. So this is really important why we're focusing on Lake Erie. As you know, or maybe this is something that you are going to be learning through this program. This lake has a lot of challenges, and that includes everything from toxic algal blooms, what's going on with the state of the environment throughout Lake Erie, what's going on with invasive species. It has a lot of challenges, and it does really need this joint effort by community scientists to be helping to assess the health of the lake and participating in some of the activities that help to get to know the lake and in some of the restoration initiatives. So As I mentioned, we had about 35 spots. There were so many people that were interested. We had over 300 applicants the first year that we had to actually increase the number of spots, and we did that by pulling in from other grants. So this is what the Lake Erie Guardians program looks like now, how it's dispersed. So it's not just Lake Erie proper. I want to make that clear. It is the Lake Erie watershed where we are monitoring. So folks, you could see they're sort of clustered in different areas. Niagara, up around London Kitchener area, along the lake, all the way out to the west end of the lake. That's probably the most impacted by the lake's challenges. So all of these folks or organizations are doing the monthly sampling, which is a requirement of the program, and they're also engaging in the monthly challenges, which I'll explain a little later. So as I mentioned, yes, we did put out the call for the 35 spots. Over 300 people joined, and over that first summer, this was the impact of the work, and it exceeded every single expectation that we had. So overall, we collected 3,636 data points that summer. We had 481 challenge participants, and that included water testing, cleaning shorelines. We had a lot of planting, things like understanding traditional territories, recognizing invasive species. That was the level of participation. We had 2,695 square meters of shoreline and wetland restored, and we planted nearly 500 trees and shrubs that summer. That's just kind of a little bit of an overview of the impact of this joint effort throughout the watershed. Just a little bit about how this worked. On the last weekend of every month, the Guardians, that's when they collected they did their water sampling, and that is going to be the same expectation that we have for all of the participants this year. For the challenges, as I mentioned, these are the types of challenges that we had people do. So that included, as I mentioned, the shoreline cleanups. We had the shoreline naturalization challenge, which is essentially if you did have shoreline that you are making efforts or you are naturalizing those shorelines for resilience. And we did pair up with the Essex County Restoration Authority and groups in London as well to do specific restoration that was needed for those areas. So in Essex region, they lost about 95% of their wetlands. So we did a wetland restoration, and we're going to be doing that again this year. In London, we were looking at stormwater and wastewater ponds that needed that sort of riparian buffer zones that were added. So we had those sort of localized challenges and restorations that were done. We did invasive and nuisance species identification, truth and reconciliation efforts. We also had the VAST tool, the Niagara Coastal VAST Visual Assessment Survey tool. It was a challenge in 2021. We're going to be adding that this year. We also had things like the Lake Erie Challenge, which was really about getting people down to the water and participating in different activities for the lake and raising funding for the lake. So that had happened late in the summer. We had done things like the former Canadian Freshwater Alliance's Antler River Race, Temp Blitz, and additional planting events. Now, this project was made strong because we had such collaboration. We are working through the entire watershed, and there are experts and really just energized and engaged folks already on the ground. So throughout, I mentioned already a few. The Essex Region Conservation Authority was an amazing collaborator on the first year in 2021. We worked with Reforest London. We worked with the Gordon Foundation's data stream for data sharing. We worked with Niagara Coastal, the Peely Wing Store. So all of these groups, these individuals, they made this project as strong as it was, and they were there on the ground for those local volunteers so that they had places to go and ways to get engaged in their local communities. So I've already spoken a little bit about the water, the planting highlights. So I'm not going to spend too much time on here. These are just some photos of the day, and they were just fantastic events. And we're going to make sure that those that can join for our planting events, you'll all receive an invitation for this. I'm going to skip ahead. And this is the second featured collaboration that we had with the Gordon Foundation's data stream. So the Gordon Foundation, just briefly, what they are is throughout Canada, they have a number of data platforms. Then they're hosting water data of all kinds, and they're hosting it in a format that is very accessible, it's usable and reusable. So for open data, it is in the most recognized standard, the WQX's EPA standard. So we paired up with them, and what essentially this is that they're pulling our data from our data platform from the Lake Erie Guardians and sharing it on their Great Lakes data stream. And this really is groundbreaking for a couple of reasons. It really makes the data have a wider audience. So it's in a platform hosting all kinds of data, as I mentioned. So it's more findable, usable, and accessible. And it really is allowing those decision makers to access the data and use it and reuse it. We've in Canada, our watersheds, about 60% of our watersheds, we do not know what's going on with them. So this data that's being collected by community science and making sure that it is widely shared and used and accessible is really, really important. So before I jump into, this is just the last piece I'll speak to before we jump into the actual test kit training. We did a survey of the participants before and after they participated in the program, just to see the impact. So based on the survey's results from 2021, we were researching nature connectedness and personal values before and after participating in this program. So what we discovered was that 83% of our water rangers volunteers, they taught others how to test the water after they had participated in this program. 82% spent more time in nature, and 91% spoke to others about protecting the environment. So these are really important and wide-reaching impacts, and we're looking forward to increase that impact this year. So without further ado, I am going to jump into the test kit training. And please, if you have any questions during the test kit training, feel free to raise your hands. Otherwise, we do have a question period allocated. There's time at the end of this training session. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Just kind of make this note here. And get on to the test kit training. Okay, so I'm just going to make some space here. This is your Water Rangers Freshwater Explorer test kit. Now, you should have all received one of these in the mail if you are a new participant. If you are a returning Lake Erie Guardians participant, you'll be using your test kit from the first year. And you can reach out to us if you are missing or needing any resupplies. So I'll just let everyone know that. So the first thing you're going to do when you get your test kit, you open it up. And the first thing I'm going to have you do is pull out your field guide. So all of these come with a field guide, and it's really, really important that before you head out into the field, that you are reading this cover to cover. Everything I'm going to cover today is in here. So this is going to be your in the field guide. You can reference back here anytime. And you'll also note that in addition to this training session, in addition to this field guide, there are links so you can go online, learn about the parameters, learn how to take the tests at any time. So there's a lot of resources. So don't feel like you have to remember everything in your head. You have all of these aids all the time, including myself and I'm our community trainer. So the field guide is going to walk you through everything from getting started right down to taking your tests and then sharing your data on the data platform. So the first thing you are going to do before you go testing is we're going to discuss how you're going to choose a sampling location. That's very, very important. You're part of the Lake Erie Guardians program. You probably have locations in mind, but it's really important that when you're thinking about these locations, they are meeting certain criteria. First is you do want to take a look around and see, is anyone else sampling in this location? So if somebody's sampling exactly where you had in mind, it makes sense to sort of spread around and get other data. So that's one of the key things. And you could find out who's sampling by visiting our website and looking at the Water Rangers data map. So you could see who's in your area, and you could also visit the data stream to see if there's any other, we host our own data. Data stream has additional information if there's other government bodies or other groups that are active in that area. The next thing about your location is its accessibility and its safety. Those are the top priorities. These need to be areas that you could get to easily and return to, and that they're safe for you to get down and access. So for rivers, for example, they're very dynamic. So if you are sampling rivers or streams in the Lake Erie watershed, you want to make sure that these are these are safe access points. If there's water that is rushing, if they're unstable banks, areas where you're not safe, this is not a good location. So you want to have that safety top of mind. That's the same for beaches. Anything that's on the shoreline, if these are areas where there could be lots of waves, there's depth, you really need to prioritize your safety and anyone that's with you first. So choosing locations that are safe and that you can access, those are the top priorities. Next, and the other things that we're looking for, so in addition to there's an already sampling exactly there, that these are safe places you can return to. We're looking for just a variety of areas that are not sampled and we don't have data for. So Lake Erie watershed, like a lot of the watersheds, it's missing a lot of data, especially off of the lake. So any of the tributaries coming in. So we're looking for areas really that around where you are. So it is important that you are going sort of where you live in that environment, and finding up to 2, 3, if you want to do even more locations than that, looking for sites that you could sample. So we're anything from rivers, creeks around your home, all of those are fantastic, something that you care about. We can talk more in depth if anyone has any questions about the sites that they have in mind for this. You're welcome to reach out to us and we can help you choose some of those sites. There is information about choosing locations. It's more in depth than what I've spoken to online and in the book as well. So again, reach out to us if you want to chat about your sites and access those locations. So once you've pulled out the guidebook, read this through, you have a good sense of where you're going to go. You're going to go through the different tests in here. So apologize, we are sitting in front of the computer. This is not face-to-face. We're going to be pulling out all the different materials here. So the first thing you're going to look at is your little goodie bag. So everyone is going to get this goodie bag, and it includes, you have things like a magnet that tells you which Sundays of the month and weekends of the month you're going to test. We have our little recycling pack, and I'll explain this when we get to the test strip. So this is for the test strip recycling. We have a little emergency pack if you are on site and you do see something that in the water that you're concerned about that does need to be escalated. You do have whirl packs in here, as well as gloves to take in a sample that could be taken to a lab if you are in a situation like that, which is not unheard of. It's unlikely, but it has happened before to some of our guardians and other community testers. We also have just little postcards, stickers, as well as your calibration solution. So calibration solution, I'll explain this when we get to the conductivity test, but this is for your conductivity meter that needs to be calibrated on an annual basis. If you have a brand new kit, your conductivity meter is coming calibrated. So that's not something you need to worry about. But if you are a returning guardian, you do need to use this packet, and all the instructions are here in the front using the QR code, are going to the waterrangers.ca calibrate for your conductivity meter. In addition to this goodie bag, we now have our testing equipment. So number 1 is your reacher stick. This is our new model of the reacher stick. So if you have a kit from 2021 or beyond, you will have the selfie stick, but this is the brand new one that we have designed that fits perfectly with our water cups. Like this, and you could be taking your samples. I have some water in front of me. So we're going to be pretending this is the lake, but this is what you're going to be using to collect the water for your first 2 samples. So cup and reacher stick. After that, we have our conductivity meter. So the conductivity meter is very, very simple to use. I'm going to walk you through the parameters when we start to take the test. We have our test strips here. We have our dissolved oxygen test here. Open it up. And we have our thermometer. This is for air and water temperature. And we have our Secchi disc. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through each one of these parameters and how to take the test and what we're actually testing for each of these tests. Again, it's a lot of information. All of this is also online. I'm always going to be available, and it's also explained in your guidebook. So when you're going down to the water, the first thing you're going to be doing is remembering that you need to record all of your test results, because that's why you're going down. We want to be collecting this data and sharing this data and seeing patterns over time. That is how we're going to understand the health of the water. So the first thing you're going to do is take out this little notepad, and you're going to fill out the very, very important local information as well as weather information. We also have the field app. I'm going to walk you through that later, but we're going to start with this notepad. So date, time, these are very, very important. The time and date of you taking your samples is critical. That's why we have a regular testing day. So you do want to be testing regularly, at least once a month. So if you have that testing weekend at the end of the month, you're very welcome to test more often, but you're testing regularly, and try to go out the same time of the day. So we encourage you to go out in the morning, just because of the conditions. So before 10 a.m., if that's not possible, that's okay, but that's what you're sort of aiming for. So your date and time. Now the body of water, very important to know where you are, and the location name. So the body of water would be, for example, Lake Erie or the Grand River or the name of the creek. And then the location is actually the specific location where you're at. So if it doesn't have a name, for example, if you're in just a very specific, you're at a point on a creek that doesn't have a name, you're going to give it a location name. So it would be maybe the nearest access road. If there's a north and south or a certain bend, if there's a name of the beach where you're going, that's the location name you're going to be putting down. Now the weather and all of the information that has to do with what's going on. This is very important. The weather has a huge impact on the water quality. So it's very important to note this down. It's very simple. It's done with images. So is it sunny? Is it rainy? Is it all three at the same time? You're noting that. And then you're also noting the weather in the last 24 hours, because again, that has a huge impact. Wind, rain, all of these have an impact on the water quality. So we do want to be noting that. So once you're done writing all of that sort of establishing information, you're ready to take your tests. So I have my water over here that we are pretending is our lake today. So this is just regular tap water. This is not the untreated surface water that you're going to be testing. So we are in lakes and creeks and so forth. So the first test we are going to do is our temperature test. So the temperature test, the reason why we have this thermometer, even though some of our meters do have temp reading, is that sometimes you are only taking the temperature, or you don't have access to the weather station to know what's going on outside. So this temperature for the thermometer, for the air temperature, you can hang this in the shade in a tree and leave it for 5 minutes, and it'll give you an accurate reading of the air temperature. If you don't have a tree, you could hold it away from your body in the shade for a few minutes, up to 5 minutes, and then get the air temperature. But if you do have a smartphone and you are in an urban area, you can also use the nearest weather station. So you would go on your phone, make sure it's the nearest weather station to you, and you can also get what the air temperature is that way. So it really depends on where you are, but this is the analog way to get the air temperature. Next, you're going to do conductivity, and the conductivity has a water temp on it. You can also be taking the water temp this way. So if you are using the thermometer, take the water temp, and leave it in put it in the water, leave it in for 5 minutes, and then you'll be able to get the reading. Otherwise, you can use the conductivity meter, which has a built-in thermometer. So conductivity, conductivity, I'm going to walk you through each of the parameters. That is about measuring the ionic content of the water. So essentially, how is electricity moving through the water? And that is impacted by ions. So just if just in other terms, if you have, for example, a lot of salt in the water, you're going to have a higher conductivity than you would in fresh water. Other things that impact the conductivity in the water, just very naturally occurring things. So if you're in a very dynamic lake or river, I live on a very urban river in Toronto, it has higher conductivity than just say a fresh cold water lake would have a lower conductivity. Pollution, stormwater runoff, combined sewer overflows, that is a huge impact on your conductivity. So when you're taking a measurement like conductivity, you have to know what is the norm or what can I expect for this type of water body. That's really, really important before that's how you understand what these tests mean. So for example, I'm living in Toronto and Toronto. Lake Ontario is a deep freshwater lake. So what we would expect for a lake like that, for our conductivity reading would be about 300, 350 would be a conductivity reading that we would get. That's what we're expecting. If the next one of the days I'm taking my sample, I have a reading of 1,500, even 15,000, that's a sign that something has gone in the water. And that's something regular I would get. For example, if I'm near one of the stormwater outfalls on the lake. I'll also get a higher reading on the Humber River or one of those other rivers that have a lot of stormwater runoff and other contaminants coming in, especially after heavy rains will have higher conductivity. What's regular, sort of around 500, 800 for conductivity, it'll skyrocket after one of those events. Another thing that really impacts conductivity is road salts. So we actually use this as a measure for road salts. So that's exactly, we'll see readings on a river that like the Humber, instead of it being 800, it'll be 30,000 microsiemens will be the result. So the main thing to do, start to take your conductivity readings, start to collect data, but really understand what the norm is before, so we could see what the health is. So for the type of water body, and that's all in our guides as well. So to take the conductivity reading, the first sample, just give me a second, is you get your cup ready. So this is going to be one of the cup measurements that we have here. Now, what these cups are, this has been washed with very warm water and soap and dried between my samples. But when you're going down to the water, the first thing you're going to do, you're not going to be taking a sample on the surface. I pretend this is the surface of water or something like this. You're going about 10 to 15 centimeters below the water. So if you're going in, ideally, if you have a boat, you can go into the middle of the lake. If not, if you're going off a pier, if you're walking into the water, that's about the depth you're aiming for. In creeks and streams, there's sometimes not that depth, but you are going for middle and as deep as you go, about that length, depth that you're going. So the first thing you're going to do is dip the cup. You're going to do a rinse 3 times. So you fill it with water, dump it, fill it with water, dump it, fill it with water. Then you're ready to take your sample. So you put, the water is filled here. I filled it in my imaginary lake. You turn on the conductivity meter, which is very simply done by turning on this button up here. You put it into the water. You could take the stick off, but I'm just going to leave it on. And you sort of swirl it around like this. Now the reading is going to be sort of jumping up and down. Okay. And then it'll stabilize. You could leave it right here. And I'm getting my reading. This is tap water from the city of Toronto. So my results are 327 microsiemens. That's the conductivity level. And then my water temp is 19.6 degrees. So what you can do, if you pull it out of the water, the reading's going to change because it's now reading the air. So one way, if you want to go record your results, there's a hold button. You press the hold button and it holds the reading like this. You can bring it over and note it in your notepad. So you're going to write down the conductivity level and the water temp if you did use this for your water temp. Fantastic. Test number 1. Test number 2, and make sure to turn it off like this. There's a little towel in here. You just wipe it off because you just want to make sure that it's not rusting. They do hold their calibration really well, but you still want to prolong the life of the equipment. So turn it off to preserve the battery, and also wipe it off before you put it away. So the next test we're going to do, let me just take my reacher stick off. Using the same water, you're going to do your test with the test strips. So again, the parameters for the test strips are, we're looking at chlorine, pH, alkalinity, and hardness. So the chlorine is not naturally occurring. You're not going to find chlorine just out in the wild. This is something that we put in water to treat water to make it safe for consumption as well as for use. It's used as a water treatment. So the only reason you would have chlorine in a natural setting like a river or a lake is because treated water is getting into that water body. So we're expecting zeros on this, or hoping for zeros. If they are higher, that means that they are impacted by treated water. So that could be both potable water, so drinking water, as well as stormwater and sewage that sometimes gets a blast of chlorine before it makes its way into the water. So that's the first parameter on this. The second one is pH. So quickly, pH is, if you're thinking of the sort of pH scale, it's on a scale of 14, you have acidic and basic. We want our water someplace in the middle. So between 6.8 and about 7.4 is about the norm we're expecting for our freshwater bodies. There are definitely exceptions to that. There's definitely areas in Canada that just have naturally occurring higher pHs. For example, our project in Saskatchewan, that's very normal that we'll see areas there. In other places, it's very, you'll see it much lower or higher. Ponds, for example, have different pH than a larger water body, like a big freshwater lake. So really, again, it's about knowing what kind of water are you sampling, what's normal for there, so that you can understand what your test results mean. pH is very interesting in the Lake Erie area. It is one of the parameters that is impacted by the blue-green algae bloom, so cyanobacteria. So it's one of the first indicators, and that's not always what it means, but it can show that there is a bloom before you even see one. So when you start to see the pH creep up a little bit. So that's just an example of seeing things out of the norm. So pH is our second parameter on this. And the last two are alkalinity and hardness. So alkalinity and hardness are not bad or good. They're just really giving you a little bit of a sense of what kind of environment you're in. So alkalinity, you're really just thinking about the geology of the place. But why we love alkalinity is because alkalinity can neutralize the pH. So if you have high alkalinity, it does help with neutralizing pH, either if it's too basic or too acidic. So it is a helping friend in certain cases. And then hardness is really, if you're thinking about the hardness of your water, a lot of cities, especially in Ontario, they have harder water. So that's when you can't get the suds to go into shampoo. When you get into more remote areas, you'll see sort of softer water. That's really the indication. And we're just looking at sort of that calcium for hardness. So they're not bad or good. They should be fairly stable. Pretty much, you should have their readings almost the same every time. If you do see drastic or any changes in your alkalinity and hardness, that could be a sign that there are sort of contamination events or some changes happening. So this is a very, very quick test. You have your water here. You're just going to put it in the water for 2 seconds. We have a human instinct for some reason to now shake this strip. Everyone does it. Do not shake it because you're just shaking the water off and it's not absorbing into the pad. So just be ready for your hand wanting to shake it, and don't let it shake the water. So you're going to put it in 2 seconds, let it wait for 20 seconds, and then using the bottle, you're going to read what the test results are. So put it in the water like this. 1, 2. Not going to shake the water off. Hold it like this for 20 seconds. And then on your bottle, on the back, there's a little reader. So that gives you the color. So what you're going to do after 20 seconds is you hold it like this. And I know the light is not very good in here. And go parameter by parameter. Now, keep in mind, this is my tap water. So I'm expecting there to be chlorine in there because that's how they're treating chlorine that's in our distribution system. So I actually have a very high chlorine reading. Usually it's 0. My total chlorine is actually a 1. Now this is, again, you might see between 0.5 and 1 in urban areas. because you are getting treated water going into the water bodies. If you're in more remote areas, you're in a creek, and you're seeing chlorine, that's something to be concerned about, because that's a little bit more unexpected. So my chlorine is 1. I'm reading. Now I move on to my pH. You could just make sure you could see what I'm doing here. I'm moving color by color. The top one was the chlorine. I'm now onto my pH. My pH is expecting it to be quite neutral. Yeah, it's hitting 7.2 for my pH. Note that down, nothing out of the ordinary there. My alkalinity is 120 and hardness is 100 here. So noting all of this down in my notepad. Over here, you have the lines for all of these right there. So those are the 2 tests that you're going to do with this water cup. And now you're done with this. You could dump the water back into the lake or the water body, into the grass, and that's great. For this test strip, you're going to go back to your goodie bag. If you live in an area like I do, where there's lots of recycling options, these are recyclable. If you do not have recycling options, there's an envelope, and you could take these every time you sample, put them in this envelope here, and send it back to us at the end of the season or after 2 years, and we'll recycle them for you. So we're trying not to have a lot of waste accumulation. So there. Now our second to last test is dissolved oxygen. Now this one is about speed, and this is something to remember because it does get forgotten over time. When you're taking this test. This is a test that you take immediately because we're looking at the dissolved oxygen. So dissolved oxygen is essentially the format that that oxygen is in the water. So oxygen gets into the water in a number of ways. We have aeration. So if you're thinking of the wind and the air blowing, that's bringing oxygen into the water. If you're having, rapid water, thinking of those like rushing rivers, that's bringing sort of aeration, oxygen into the water. Obviously plants in the water are also bringing oxygen into the water. So we have, again, there's all different levels of oxygen that you can expect in different areas, but you want to know what's normal for your area. It's important. We're living in Canada. We are looking at the Great Lakes. There are some natural fluctuations over the year on the levels of oxygen in the water. So we used to have deep winters where the lakes would freeze over and there would be ice cover, snow, and there wasn't, that would naturally cause a decrease in oxygen. The plants weren't producing oxygen, it wasn't getting in. So you'd see these dips in oxygen. That was very normal. Now we're seeing not so fun events that are happening. For example, algal blooms. They're not actually an algae. They're a bacteria. They're causing decreases and sometimes complete loss of oxygen in certain areas of Lake Erie, and that's of concern. So oxygen levels are obviously really important for all the creatures that live there that do need the oxygen, and it's something that we want to keep an eye on. You'll see also natural decreases. For example, if you are sampling and vernal ponds, as they're drying up, you're going to see the plants are dying, things are drying up. You're going to just see a natural decrease. That's to be expected. It's not to be expected sort of in the height of the summer in the west end of the lake if there weren't these algal blooms. So for this test, we don't want the wind, because that's going to add in the air to get to this, because that's just going to falsely give you a false, very high reading of oxygen. So it's very important you do this test quickly. So this is it's also a beautiful test. It's my favorite one. I love this color blue. So this test, what you're going to do is you have these different materials here. You have this little 25 ml cup, and at the bottom there, you can't really see it very well, there are little grooves at the bottom. You also have a box of ampoules. I'm going to hold this up and at the bottom of the ampoule tip, there's a little white band. That's actually what you're going to be breaking off because it's going to siphon the water in. You have a little timer. The timer is for 2 minutes. You're very welcome to also use your phone or your watch to do this. You have your little timer like this. And then you also have your reader. So this is how you're going to actually go through and understand what the test results are with blue, with the blue reader. So what you're going to do for this test is, again, this should be, cleaned, hot water, with some dish soap dried between each of the samples. When you're going down to the water body, you're going to do the scoop again 3 times. And then when you're ready, you're going to go for the official scoop for the sample. So you're going the same thing. You don't want a surface sample where you're just scooping along the surface. You are going, if you can, 10 to 15 centimeters down, like this much. Then as soon as you scoop the water, you're going to put the ampoule into one of the grooves on the bottom. I always put it in the one that's closest to me, and then I just pull it towards myself. And there's a siphon action that happens. You don't have to do anything. The ampoule is going to siphon the water up, and it's already going to start to turn blue immediately. I'm going to obviously demo this. Then you're going to pull it out, turn it over 1, 2, 3 times, and let it sit there for 2 minutes, and then you can take your official reading. So I'm going to grab my water. I have it. Put it in. Snap. It's filled with water, and I'm going to put up some white paper. The bubble went up once. The bubble went up twice. And the bubble went up 3 times. And now I'm going to wait 2 minutes for the reading. This is one where if you weren't fast enough, it's better to just dump the water and try again. Because your first time, you're going to be sort of fumbling, and that's fine. So practice this a couple times. It's okay. Just use, if you have to use an extra ampoule, that's absolutely fine. We're going to wait 2 minutes. Got my timer going. And this pops out of the black box. So just to be mindful of time. To do the reading, what you do is you start at the end here, and you just place the ampoule between them. Make sure you take this out. It's really hard to read this in the box. The other thing you want to do is if you're wearing sunglasses, to take them off. It's going to make it look darker if you don't. That's for all the tests when you're doing, especially any ones with color. You're going to be taking them out of taking your sunglasses off. And this one, if you're in really bright sun, so if you're in a sunny place, and it's shining on this, it's going to make it difficult to read. So you can actually create a bit of shade just by placing that black box on top, or just kind of using your body to get a bit of shade so you can read this. So I'm going to move this down until you have the blue that matches. And you can see it's very dark. So keep going. This is good to do with a friend. And I got to turn it to myself. We're looking, you can still see it's quite dark. So we're right at the end. See, that's a nice match there. So that is 12 there. So I would note that down in my notepad as well. This is once you break the glass, this can be quite sharp here. So just be careful not to be touching this. This is a test if you are doing this with kids. We usually recommend sort of 8, 9. That's a bit young to be doing this without supervision because of the broken glass. So just be careful of this. And then in your bag, you have this little garbage. So you could put this in here for safe disposal and just safe transport when you get back home. So we have all of these readings so far. The last test we're going to do is this. You can only do this test if you're sampling on a lake, like off a dock. It doesn't work for rivers and streams. And that is our clarity in depth test that we do with the Secchi-meter. So if you are going to be, going out to a boat to a middle of the lake or offshore, or you have a dock or a place that you could be going in, this test is a great one to do. And if you are not in one of those areas, this isn't a test. You cannot do this from a river. Trust me, I've tried from a kayak, and this is just being pulled downstream. You're not going to get accurate readings. So what you would do in that case is just do a visual look. Can I see the bottom or not? And there's a little spot on your notepad where you mark if you could see the bottom or not. And that's sort of a visual clarity test. The Secchi desk is how it works is essentially there is black and white here. And you're going to be either from the boat or off the dock or one of those areas. You're dropping it in the water. This is our newer version of this. There's a couple of versions of the Secchi desk. So they work the same way. So if you have our other meter, it works the same way. You lower it in the water, and you're going to do this twice. The first one is for how deep is the water. Now, what happens a lot of times is pretend this is the water here, and where my hand is up here, that's where people are taking the reading from. You don't want to take the reading from where I'm holding it above the water. It's from where the water is. So what you do is you lower this down. It does not work if there's waves. It doesn't work if the water isn't calm. You lower it down straight to the bottom. If it's like this isn't an accurate reading. So it needs to be going down straight to the bottom. It's very heavy, so you will feel it. You got to do it a couple times to get used to it. You'll feel it hit the bottom. And then again, from the water, not from where your hand is above the water, you hold it and you take the reading. So it'll be, 2 meters and 50. That's the depth that you're taking. Now, the second depth is it's actually a clarity reading. So what you're doing is, again, take your sunglasses off. It makes it harder to do with sunglasses on. You lower it in the water until you can't see this black and white anymore. So you lower it slowly till you can't see it. And then you raise it back up until you could see it again, until it's visible again. And that's the reading, the Secchi reading, and that is clarity. So you're looking at the water's clarity versus its depth. That's a very, very important reading. Some water just is naturally murky. This time of year, there's so much pollen on and in the water. The water's definitely murky. Like, that's just a seasonal thing that we're going to see. Other areas, again, big storm happened. There's a sewage stormwater runoff. That's going to make the water like chocolate brown. And then you're going to have a very different Secchi reading. So this is a really important test. It tells you a lot about what's going on in the water, what's normal, what happens after storm events, and so forth. So again, this is only if you're going to be doing water off piers, deeper lakes and stuff. That's not a test you need to do if you're creeks and streams and different things like that. And in very fast moving rivers, it's not going to work. Okay, so I'm going to pack everything up here, but we have been taking down all of our test results on this notepad. Now, what happens is that this was really fun. We took all our tests. Now you're tired, and this is going to stay on this notepad, and that's not what we want to do. So I'm going to we have about 5 minutes left. I might keep it for 2 extra minutes and show you what is very, very, very important to do with this data now that you have it. So we put everything away with the test kit, and I'm going to just quickly share my screen again. Okay. Bear with me. Okay, now, so to share your data, we'll do this via our Water Rangers data platform. So you're going to go to waterrangers.ca and you go to the data platform here, to the dashboard. Now, some of you already have an account, and that's fantastic. So what you would do, you're just going to continue to share your data as you would by logging into your account. You're already part of the Lake Erie Guardians group, and you share it via your locations. The only note I'm going to make on that is if you are creating any new locations, to make sure to assign them to the Lake Erie Guardians group, so we have all of that, the group's data there together. If you are new, what you're going to do first is to sign up for a user account. And you do this by just clicking what I did up at the user side, user sign up, and you fill in first, last name, email, your password. You'll get the prompt on your email to confirm your account, and then you are logged in. So what you're going to do once you've logged in is you're going to create your, essentially your user profile, and then you're going to request, or I can also invite you to join the Lake Erie Guardians group. So this is where, unless you're a separate group, like for example, Niagara Coastal, where you are going to be sharing your data. So it's important that it's all part of the group. This is an official program that you're part of, and this is where it's shared. So you could see that we have 581 observation sets. So that's an observation set is exactly what we did today. It's all those tests together. We have 150 locations being monitored by the group. So this is where, thanks, I appreciate your patience while get everything up, where we're active. You can see over here where my mouse is, and these are all of our members that are contributing data here. So you're going to, once you're signed up, you're going to come to this group and request to join the group here. So once you are signed up, ready to go, I'm just going to log in so I can show you. You're going to be, oops, able to contribute data. So if you have existing locations, you can either use our iOS app. So you just go to the App Store and get that on your phone. And that's really, really easy to do when you're in the field. You should have gotten that in your email, all the emails that we've sent to you as a Lake Erie Guardians. There's how to download the app. So if you have, you've already created a user account, you're already part of the group, and you're ready to go. Using the app while you're out on the field, in addition to the notepad, is simple. Like you do it while you're on site. When you're done, all the data is already in the web platform. If you don't have an iPhone, you can do this via the website. So this is, for example, some of the active areas. I'm sampling regularly in the Welland Canal. So what I would be doing to add the test results is I've logged into my user account. I am already part of the Lake Erie Guardians group, and this is my area of sampling. I would just be adding my observation via the map. So this is where we would add observations. So as you could see, that it's the same as, I don't know if you could see me at the same time as my shared screen, the same information that we gathered today on the notepad. So I'm just transferring it from the notepad to the web app. I strongly encourage you always to write it on paper if you are going to be using the iOS app as well. One of the reasons is that things happen. People lose their phones. If it hasn't, if you were using the offline mode and you lost the phone, you've lost the data. And it's always good to have a backup. So you do write it down on the notepad, and then you either transfer it via the website, or you just add it via the iOS app. So it's very simple. You just fill out the data. Here are the testers. You're clicking off everything you noted, the sunny, rainy, your observation data, and so forth, your Secchi depth. The other things you can be doing is adding any images you took. So we always encourage you to take photos while you're down there. Visuals are fantastic. It gets other people to know where you're sampling. It helps you keep track of just things like lake water levels and so forth. And then you could upload them here. Or if you're using the app, you could just do that right from the field. Once you submit the observation, it is immediately shared online, and it is available here. So if you have any questions about setting up your account, we did send instructions on how to do that, but we'll be sending reminders of that. You could find those instructions online, or you can ask for an individual data management session with myself or Emma on how to manage your data. But this is something that it is very imperative that you do. That's how we are going to build up sort of a baseline data of the areas where you're sampling, and where over time we'll be able to see what is going on, what's normal with for your region, and if there are any issues. So really, really important that action happens. It is easily forgotten, especially if you're tired. It was hot out there and so forth, but we will send you reminders all the time. We're trying to make this as easy as possible. Make sure you get this data onto the site. So it is exactly 1:02. I'm going to pause here, and now we're just open for questions. Oh.
Okay, so I could also do tributaries and go to a boat dock not too far away and put a distance from maybe a GPS location, how far that tributary was from a dock that may have ran off into the lake at that area. All that kind of information.
Yeah, that's one thing when you're speaking about the different locations, you can think about a story there as well. So if you have a tributary and you might be, say for example, there's an outfall or sort of a natural creek river, and then it goes through, for example, an agricultural area or a town, you could sample before and after. That gives a really, really good picture of what's going on, a comparison, before, after. We don't know what that'll be. So
Right.
it's a really great thing to do. And you could also sample along the same tributary, 2, 3, 4 locations, including when the lake. Again, the lake, you'd have to be, close to the tributary mouth, but that is a fantastic way to start to get an understanding of that tributary's health and the things that are potentially impacting its health.
We have a lot of rural area in my area that
Mhm.
will be able to gather information from it. Few different lake locations that we can go to those tributaries might run off into on that same vicinity or path going across that swath of area where we're going to check. That'll be good.
Yeah, it'll be really fantastic. And then that will be probably like once you've established your locations, that's another thing that you're going to do online is set up. You will set up your account, then you set up those locations, and then they're ready to go to share your data.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're really happy to walk you through that for there. But what's the name of the tributary that you're interested in?
There's a bunch of drainage canals that go into Lake Erie from our area, maybe close to Erie, Shrewsbury, uh, Port Glasgow, Clearville. So all along Highway 3 between Adam and Glasgow, there's a lot of tributaries in that area. I'll have to get the specific name. I was writing them out, making a map ahead already. And then we'll decide what ones when we get another view of them to monitor on a regular basis.
That's and over time, right? Like we can add locations over time. Like it doesn't have to,
Yes.
but it is good, and that's what sort of a minimum of about 5 samples per location is what we're
Yeah.
looking for. But the more, the better. Really, the more regularly that you can get out there, that's the
Okay.
best.
5 samples per location. Is that 5
Oh,
from each
like over
tributary?
the season. Over
Okay,
the season.
I
So
got you. Yeah.
once a month is sort of the minimum.
Yeah.
We'd like but if you can get out there, if that's possible to do more frequently, that's great.
Yeah.
And the sampling season is longer. We are having warmer falls. So folks are definitely welcome to sample, into September, October. If it's safe, if the water's
Yeah.
not cold, the conditions are still safe for you, even into November, December. That's that we've seen. I was I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, able to sample year round this year because we just didn't have the ice cover. So we were able to get out there in the winter to do start some of the road salt monitoring that we'd been able
Right.
to do this year. So again, that's sort of what the expectation is for the program. So over the warm months and into early fall, that you're out on a monthly basis. But obviously, if that's a possibility to keep going, then that's great. And starting earlier next year, because the program, this is this year, but this is the 3rd year for certain of participants for them to be out there and collecting samples through the Lake Erie Guardian program.
All right. Now, if I get good on this and I'm having the area easily done, and I wanted to add some other areas, not not on Lake area, would I enter those in the water rangers and buy a separate uh, refills for the kits for that information, like
Yeah.
Mitchell's Bay area and Thames River? I'm a
Yeah,
half an hour
if it's
between.
in the Lake Erie watershed, and I could send you a map of where, sort of where that begins and ends. It's fantastic if it's part of the program. Say, for example, suddenly you're in Georgian Bay or Lake Huron, we would you could either join somebody else, and I could
Right.
make that connection for you, or we would just create a separate account for that to keep them. You don't need a new user account; you just would need another group for that. So we do want to keep those sort of data sets. That's
Yes.
there. But that's fantastic. If you are able to go in a different location, like even we're across Canada, like I said, we're in 20 countries. There's other places that groups that we can have you input your data with. That's great. And then I think I mentioned this at the beginning, every Lake Erie Guardian, if you are sampling a lot of places and going through your materials, everyone has one restocking kit. So your materials in your kit should be more than enough for this season and possibly next as well. Including with the expiration dates on the dissolved oxygen in the test strips. When those run out, then there are restocking kits available for the group. So anyone that is listening to this, that they're a former Lake Erie Guardian and you're running low on materials, or your test strips or dissolved oxygen have expired, just reach out to us and we'll get you the restocking. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I am just going to share my screen one more time so that you have our contact info. Just bear with me for 1 sec. While I get this up. Okay, I'm just going to share this, and this is how you're going to connect with either myself or Emma, and this is the website. Anyone that is part of Lake Erie Guardians, you are part of the newsletter, so you are going to get reminders once a month about going out sampling. That's how you're also going to get your challenge information. So every month we have a new challenge that you're invited to participate in, and keep your eyes open for the planting events that we're going to be having. So this is how you have that information, but you're always welcome to reach out to us for any one-on-one sessions you need for anything, whether it's any of the parameters that you're sampling for, data management, anything like this, just reach out to us, and we're always available for your support. So thanks very much.
Their program's very user-friendly. We're looking forward to engaging.
And hopefully get to meet in person too sometime.
Yes, that'd be awesome. Have a great day.
Good. You too. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you.